Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Professor Hamamoto, and the date is September 7, 2025. The time, 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time Zone. Welcome, one and all. Today, I have prepared for you a fascinating, highly instructive talk about the latest psychological operation that is in process. And I am warning us, that is the American people, the global public, not to fall for the distraction once more. And by distraction, I don't mean a set of events that are unimportant. Quite the contrary. These events are of signal importance, but they are serving as a smokescreen for something much more sinister. And that would include something so monumental as what is referred today colloquially as AI, artificial intelligence, or general artificial intelligence, however you want to express it. I think most of us understand that there is something afoot in the world economy, with the United States once more being at the center of this transformation. This is what some historians have referred to. What we're experiencing now is what some historians in the past have referred to as an axial moment in human civilization. Axial, AXIAL. And it's too soon to tell, of course, but it does seem that there's some monumental changes going on here that appear to be spinning out of control. And as such, there are always saviors that put themselves out front with the claim that they have a special knowledge that's going to help humanity avert disaster. And there are names that are attached to this prophetic, or should I say, pseudo prophetic tradition. On the one hand, you have Jack LaSota, otherwise known as Ziz, and the cult that took their name after him, the Zizians, at one extreme. And I put them on the same continuum. I hope you understand. You have Jack LaSota and some of these people that are pictured here in the illustration for this talk. And if you look it up, you can get some biographical information on some of the main players. I'm not going to get too bogged down in that, in the details. There's ample material in the print media, electronic media, as well as on TubeView and other sources. So I don't want to go over that ground there. But on that same continuum of salvationists, I would include Sam Altman. I would include Alex Karp. I would include Jeff Bezos. And yes, at the expense of offending Team Trump or the MAGA people, right, where Orange Man or anything that he does on his watch cannot be bad, right? You're so thoroughly inculted yourself that you can't admit the possibility that one of his sidekicks, Elon Musk, is also on this continuum of fake salvationists. Yes, Elon Musk, and I don't know when. I'm still reading the book, a full-blown biography of Elon Musk, which is a sort of a glowing tribute to the man who's remaking the 21st century. Now, the book that I'm referring today principally is one by a fellow yellow Her name is Karen Howell, Hao. It's a really nice book design. Whoever designed it, I'm not going to look it up because it's typically in really, really small print in the back. They don't get enough credit. They do a really good design here in this case, and it's published by Penguin. I don't know which conglomerate owns Penguin, probably Hachette or some globalist company. That being said, this book is excellent, and it's required reading for the average person to make sense of this transformation that I alluded to already. I would guess that even some insiders would be interested in some of the insights that are provided here based on close to about 300 interviews, person to person. This is not some desk jockey, Karen Howe. She went out there just like journalists are supposed to do, not YouTube influencers or pop-up pundits or people who have research teams spitting out copy for them. I've mentioned their names multiple times already, so I'll spare you that part of my rant. She's an actual journalist, okay? It's called The Empire of AI. And this book is right off the press. And it's going to be the focus of a separate review in itself. But I couldn't help but talk about this book now in dealing with one of the chief perpetrators of this hijacking of publicly funded technology, loosely called AI, at taxpayer expense, if you include the Departments of Defense, Energy, Commerce, maybe even the FCC, all the federal regulatory agencies to varying degrees, including the IRS that collects the money, funds at our expense this empire that's in the making, right? They're going to socialize the costs. This is the basic formula of how the welfare grifter state works. They socialize the costs of building a given infrastructure, and then they privatize the profit, right? We think we're going to be the beneficiary. We might be, maybe initially, if you get a job at one of these so-called energy plants that are popping up in rural America and in the UK and other parts of the world. Yeah, there might be jobs in the short run for a lot of people who are suffering unemployment, right? But in the long run, this is going to be one of the main institutions in what might be called technofudalism. That is a feudalistic, neo-feudalistic system that's driven by technology, right? And that's not quite an adequate term, but I'll use it because it connotes an image that we're familiar with, feudalism, right? Combined with technology. So a little bit about Karen Howe herself. She was trained at, guess what? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She's actually studied there. She got her bachelor's of science in, I think the emphasis was mechanical engineering. And she headed to Silicon Valley to find her career, to make her fame and fortune. And as she tells it, she didn't last very long. And she doesn't go into why she hates it. So perhaps, she's a little bit biased, right, in that regard. It wasn't a very pleasant experience from what I could tell. But she did talk to others, about 300 roughly, in personal interviews of people who are familiar with the same milieu, going on years and years. So let's balance out whatever personal problem she had with it from an experiential standpoint with the literature that's out there, not just as it's captured here in Empire of AI, another good book. It's more of I think, a lightweight, not to denigrate it. It's more of I don't know, a newspaper type, Fortune magazine level type, or Business Insider account. It's called Brotopia. I forgot the name of the woman. She's half Chinese and half white, but you've seen her on Bloomberg and one of these business shows. So she did have a lot of contact with a lot of the tech bros, as they're called, down in Silicon Valley. I think she was I forgot her name. Slips my mind. The book's called Brotopia, though. I think I've talked about it in this series here, the Professor Hamamoto channel. And it goes into the culture, and then that too is also based upon interviews of scores of people, with the special emphasis on women in the tech industry. And there are a lot of yellow women in tech, right? And that makes the tech bros really happy, because they grew up on anime. They're used to masturbating while watching Japanese media content and looking at manga. So they want to hire these women and be around them, like Samuel Bankman-Fried. Remember him? With so-called rational altruism or effective altruism, which is so popular down in Silicon Valley, NASA Valley, Pentagon Valley, Mossad Valley, Stanford University's backyard, which is an outgrowth like MIT of the intelligence services. Most of you know this already, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But yeah, Bankman-Fried brought in this one, Tiffany Fong, I think her name is, and she covered the trial. In truth, she's a really good journalist. I think she missed her calling, and she got screwed out of some crypto deal with one of these fraudsters, who I think was indicted and probably got a hand slap. Tiffany Fong went and confronted, it's called the Mashitsky couple. There's a husband and wife team called the Mashitskys, who stole Bitcoin or crypto, not Bitcoin, from her, and she chased after them, right? So yeah, that's two examples, three examples I've already given you of yellow women who were involved in exposing these fraudsters that like to jack off looking at yellow women, right? In the infrastructure that they are trying to capture now. I don't mean to be so crude about it, but as you know, you've heard of OnlyFriends and Pornhub, and that's really the main business of the internet, is it not? Maybe it was that was the intention all along. Okay. And what is the main content besides porno specifically from a racial national perspective? It's yellow women, it's Asian chicks. Just look it up. Just impressionistically look it up, and you can find articles that'll break it down from nationality, ethnicity, race, and you name it, right? I didn't mean to go on that sidebar. Maybe I should do an entire talk on this, right? I have to give it some more thought. In truth, I've been gathering the literature, the books that are beginning to appear on the electro internet porno empire, right? It's a lot of material to try to grasp, to assimilate. And toward that end, I want to take the time to thank my Patreons for providing the resources that allow me to buy these books and these articles. I've printed out a bunch of them. I tried to assimilate as much as I could. And I decided I'm not going to review these articles. You just go to them yourself to find out about these characters pictured here, their bios. I'll just simply summarize it. And this is not going to come as a surprise to you, I'm sure. I'll just summarize it. They're mostly they used to be just guys, brotopia, according to this one person I mentioned already, who interviewed these people. But now they're trannies, they're transgender. I'm sorry, they're transgenders, right? And this is part of a psychological operation. I haven't figured this is a hypothesis at this point. I don't have any smoking guns. I can't say that Boeing Incorporated or Microsoft or Apple or Amazon is creating these violent transgender terrorists and putting them out there. Because that was my argument in talking about so-called serial killers and the big serial killer fad, the plague that is upon us that we see on TubeU with the 25-year-old hybristophilic pop-up pundits who speak with vocal fry. By the way, I figured out where vocal fry comes out. It's a generational manifestation of a certain insider subculture. But you know where it comes from? I'm checking it out. I am the master of cultural forensics. I'm talking about Perry Hilton and Kardashian and all the other disseminators. It comes from the earlier days of cable television, shows like Dawson's Creek, right? These teen dramas that were conceived and produced by a guy named Kevin Williamson. And guess what? He's gay. GLAAD, right? The organization that has been pushing for GLBTQ representation on television, film, and new media, and now it's saturated, they're overrepresented, and organizations like the ones at the Annenberg School of Communications at USC, UCLA, film school, all film studies, media studies are heavily invested because they were up until recently getting a lot of money from USAID, and now they're just getting it from private pass-throughs like the Soros Foundation. And by the way, I've told you this many times. They were trying to recruit me for the longest time, and they meaning these people who were trying to queer the culture, the society, the economy, the world, which of course is a step closer towards the post-humanist utopia that they're pushing forward, right? Right. It's an incremental progress towards the post-human age. But anyway, I won't talk about it. I taught at UCLA in the School of Film, and I've written extensively about it. So naturally, they're going to reach out to me and show how I could pimp out the yellow population to gaydom, which is a Canaanite, Babylonian expression of their transgressive satanic religion. And I'm just not just throwing this out. Hopefully, if I have enough time, I even have a clip from an Orthodox rabbi who nails exactly what's going on here. So we have people on the right. I'm talking about political spectrum. We have people on the left. We have people in the middle centrists. We have people who are believers in Christ. People believes in Judaism. Atheists, people from all different positions, empirical positions, who are agreeing that we're in a world of trouble here. And it's being facilitated by this capture of AI. Now, unfortunately, I looked more into this one character, the rabbi, and he worships Reba, the Hasidic Reba, because I'm not a Hasidim or Hasid. I've looked at him. I studied the movement. This is a Chabad Lubavitch, and his leader is a Rebbe Schneerson, who's dead now. He's been dead several years now. So I never thought I would be looking at a YouTube video about a rabbi who's part of Chabad, Lubavitch. I'm exaggerating the pronunciation on purpose. Chabad, Lubavitch. I mean, how many Jewish comedians have there been in the history of American film and television who don't make fun of yellow people? All right, so turnabout's fair play. Chabad, excuse me, I've got some phlegm in my throat. All right, yeah, my name is Shlomo Hamamoto. If you didn't know. I never thought I'd be looking at a rabbi to confirm what I'm observing as well. And this awakening is crossing political lines. And it's not just you right-wing conspiracy tinfoil hat Alex Jones viewers who are off to the side there. You've got MIT graduates who are writing for the Wall Street Journal, for what that's worth. And we know we know, you and me, we know who runs Wall Street Journal, right? Maybe you could call this a limited hangout. She's giving us a little piece here. But we're seeing more and more books from the inside that are talking about this looming AI holocaust. And I use that term purposely, right? And I see that a lot of these characters who I mentioned, Sam Altman, Jeff Bezos, and yes, Elon Musk. I know for a lot of you out there who are MAGAs, Trump walks on water, so to speak. Right. And Alex Karp, right? Eraserhead, Alex Karp. They bear very strong resemblance to this character. His name's J. Robert Oppenheimer. Remember him? Remember the movie? Yeah, this is a very good biography, by the way. I've mentioned it before. But you read this and you see that this will to power is old, techno power and absolute control. Techno-fascism, as it's been called by certain commentators and theorists. It's nothing new. In fact, within the tradition of Judaism, there's the character of the golem, right? The person who is the creation of a renegade person who turned his face away from God and created artificial life. It's a folktale. Later made into a movie. I've talked about this in previous presentations, so I won't go through it. The point I'm making is that this will to power, I'm using the Nietzschean term, this will to power is rearing its ugly head once more. And guess who's responsible for turning it back? You and me. And we can start by not worshiping people like Elon Musk uncritically. You have to face the reality that he did a lot of good. Okay, I'm not saying he didn't do a lot of good. Right, I'm sure even Dan Bongino keeps a very clean desk. And I'm sure Kash Patel is trying the best within his very, very limited ability, right? Because he's got to, fly around in airplanes and impress his Israeli girlfriend, his dual citizen girlfriend. You know the story, right? And I'm sure Pam Bondi's trying her level best. So I don't have any problem at a certain level. But Elon Musk went into Doge, and one of his targets was to eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency, because his version, which he shares, by the way, with Sam Altman, is that of super power generator stations. And don't even think about the ones you see on the roadside, right? We're talking about complexes that are acres and acres and acres larger than what we're used to, that are going to be powering this AI revolution. Now, not to mention the water resources that are going to be required to cool down these massive supercomputers. All right. A lot of this information is here, but there are already community groups that I'm seeing on TubeView. As much as I make fun of TubeView, there are certain groups that are showing up on TubeView that are organizing themselves, you and me, locally in cities, places like South Memphis, Tennessee. Arguably the birthplace of popular music, American popular music, R&B, blues, and country and gospel. That Memphis. Have you been there? Yeah. It's right on the shores of the mighty Mississippi. But in the black community, the ghetto, South Memphis, there have been secret buy-ups of property, and we'll see a little clip later. These AI kingpins are buying up these communities and offering them jobs, of course, and polluting the air, the water, the soil, you name it, as they build this empire of AI, as Karen Howe puts it. First of all, let's take a look at Karen Howe, or I'm sorry, not Karen. We'll do that in a moment. First, I wanted to show you one of the manifestations that's on the same continuum as Altman, Karp, Musk, Bezos, and other characters. Eric Schmidt, certainly one of them. On the same continuum, this is the group called the Zizians, after this guy, La Sota, who comes from Anchorage, Alaska, worked in Silicon Valley, started a group with a philosophical foundation called rationalism, right? You can read up on that if you're interested. It's very much related to Samuel Bankman-Fried's version of effective altruism, right? These are people who are thinkers, right? But there are a lot of people out there who are maniacs who are thinkers or try to be thinkers, want to be thinkers. Some of them get caught early on. Brian C. Koberger. Some of them attain political power and rule over entire nations. We've seen that happen in modern history. So here are the Zizians.
Connected to the killing of a border patrol agent in Vermont, an elderly couple in Pennsylvania, and a fringe group in the Bay Area. I've been working with my colleagues at the Chronicle to make it all make sense for you. Let's go back to November 2019. A radical offshoot of the rationalist movement called the Zizians staged a protest against the Center for Applied Rationality while dressed in black robes and Guy Fawkes masks. Ziz, the group leader, who's also known as Jack Lasota, and 3 associates were arrested: Emma Borhanian, Gwen Danielson, and Alexander Leatham. Fast forward almost 2 years, Ziz and the associates file a federal lawsuit against Sonoma County, Westminster Woods, and the 2 deputies. They say they were wrongly arrested, abused, assaulted, and mocked for being transgender. In August of 2022, Ziz allegedly dies in a boating accident in San Francisco Bay, according to an obituary in a Fairbanks, Alaska newspaper. Then in November, Leatham, Borhanian, and Dow allegedly attack their Vallejo landlord, Curtis Lind, with one impaling him with a samurai sword through his chest. Lind shoots 2 of his assailants, killing Borhanian. Lind survives the attack, but is left blind in one eye. Leatham and Dow are charged with murder and attempted murder. A few months later, in Chester Heights, Pennsylvania, Richard Zatko and his wife Rita are found shot to death in their home. And Jack Lasota, the namesake of the Zizian movement, was arrested in the state as police investigated that crime, indicating that Ziz was actually very much alive. Remember the federal lawsuit Ziz filed in 2021? That's now dismissed because the plaintiffs are unwilling to pursue further action. In November of last year, Teresa Youngblood and Maximilian.
Well, there's more to the story, of course. I'll let you look at the story yourself. It's still very much in process, by the way. Now, this timeline that I looked at starts in 2016. And it runs right up until very, very recently, until the early part of 2025, or January of 2025, where a couple of law enforcement people were shot by a couple of self-identified Zizians. And of course, as I told you before, they identify as trans or transgender. And by the way, I'll take this time to remind you that I did a talk called Violent or Militant Transgenderism on this channel. You might want to take a look at it, right? Because it kind of lays out in more depth the history, the origins, the intellectual and the political origins of trans ideology. It comes right out of the university. And for years and years, I've been naming the professors who have been given endowed chairs at places like USC, Berkeley, Yale, all the prestige universities, typically in the English department and comparative literature, because the globalists have the sciences already locked up. They had to get the humanists into the fold, so they started giving out these endowed positions, and they're promoting GLBT ideology and gender fluidity and transgenderism. And your people who are the pop-up pundits who are still talking about GLBTQ and DEI, you're way behind the curve, right? We're talking about the militant manifestation outgrowth of this movement. So you need to play catch up if you're behind the curve, which is what YouTube typically likes to flood us with, so that we're mobilized thinking about what happened in the 1950s or the 60s, so that we can't figure out what's going on right now, right in front of us, in process in 2025. Now that gap, the temporal gap, the knowledge gap, the professional gap is closing, right? Let's take a look at one Karen Howe. Look her up. She has because the book just came out. She has a very strong presence in TubeU. She's done a lot of interviews. Better yet, read the book. And she's been on shows that range across the political spectrum, from Democracy Now!, which is leftist, anchored by Amy Goodman, to you pick. Most conservatives are quite much on board, except for the ones who are the always Trump, always Elon Musk bros. They see the problem here. So here's Karen Howe, or Howe rather.
Yeah. Altman he's spent his entire career in Silicon Valley. He was at first a startup founder himself, and he was part of the first batch of companies that joined Y Combinator, today, one of the most prestigious startup accelerators in Silicon Valley. But at the time, he was the very first class, and no one really knew what YC was. He did that for 7 years. He was running a company called Looped, which was a mobile-based social media platform, effectively a Foursquare competitor, but which actually started earlier than Foursquare. It didn't do very well. It was sold off for parts. But what he did do very well during that time was ingratiate himself with very powerful networks in Silicon Valley. So one of the first and longest mentors that he ended up having throughout his career is Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, who then plucked Sam Altman to be his successor. And Sam Altman then, at a very young age, became president of YC. And then he ended up doing that for around 5 years. And during his tenure at YC, he dramatically expanded YC's portfolio of companies. He started investing not just in software companies, but also pushing into quantum, into self-driving cars, into fusion, and really going for those hard tech engineering challenges. And if you look at how he ended up then as a CEO of OpenAI, I think that he basically was trying to figure out what is going to be the next big technology wave. Let me test out all of these different things, position myself as involved in all of these different things. So in addition to all his investments, he started cultivating this idea of AI also seems like maybe it'll be big. Let me start working on an idea for a fundamental AI research lab that becomes OpenAI. And once OpenAI started being the fastest one taking off, then Altman hops over and becomes CEO.
That is a excerpt from a larger interview that I can't remember the person who did the review here, but it gives you an idea of the scope of her book here. She doesn't talk about some of because after all, she works for the Wall Street Journal. She's not going to talk about the dark and kinky side of Sam Altman. That's for someone like you who's watching this to figure it out. We need to know whether he takes his harem to Burning Man, right, and puts veils on them so no one can see their faces. I'm talking about Eric Schmidt. That's what he used to do. Or some other weird stuff. Or Elon Musk. He's on wife number 8 or 9. And he impregnates them so that he can repopulate the world in his image. Right? He's implementing what Jeffrey Epstein could only fantasize about by cloning himself, making little Jeffrey Epsteins all over the world. That's Elon Musk. And we worship him because he saved a bunch of corporations tons of money. Do you think he's really feuding with Donald Trump? But by the way, he wasn't at that tech bro meeting the other day, but I think they are minimizing their public appearances. And they might even be faking this fallout or this tension between them. Because you know what? They're on the same page. Donald Trump was very proud of his uncle, John Trump. You know the story. Nikola Tesla papers and MIT professor. I forgot where he taught. Right? Dr. Professor John Trump. Technologist. Technophile, right? He's bought into it completely. He's into it. That's going to be the new economy. That's what the big, giant, gorgeous bill is all about. Transforming. All right. So let's since Karen Howe is, maybe that's her next book or your book, because we need to know more the intel on Sam Altman. Right. We need to know his political relationships. We need to know his citizenship. Is he a dual citizen? Who is he loyal to? He's probably loyal to no country that I can tell. Yeah, he went to Stanford, but he's a dropout, like all these guys are. Right. Not to denigrate that. He had bigger fish to fry, so to speak. So let's take a look at some of the dark history of our friend Sam Altman.
The CEO of OpenAI has built a doomsday bunker. It's buried and hidden in the Navajo desert. It's stocked with antibiotics, a hydroponic food system, and weapons. This is the same man racing to build artificial general intelligence, while now telling the world it's perfectly safe. So why prepare for catastrophe? To find out, I went through practically every interview, essay, podcast, panel, and speech he's ever given. Very few people know that in 2017, before he was in the spotlight and years before ChatGPT, Altman published blog posts with a chilling theory that directly contradicts what he says today. He wrote that the AI species he's creating will, in fact, lead to the end of the world as we know it. And his utopian vision is that we will be effectively assimilated into an AI-powered hive mind, and his old posts get even crazier. If there are two versions of Altman, one who reassures the public, and one who prepares for the worst, which one should we believe? And what I found while digging wasn't just a single contradiction. It was a pattern, one that becomes more troubling the deeper you look. May 16th, 2023, Sam Altman sits in front of Congress, calmly insisting that AI is under control, that it's being built safely. It's a tool, not a creature.
But I now think we are very much building a tool and not a creature.
In the last 2 years, he repeats these lines over and over in interviews, policy papers, even in front of regulators. Meanwhile, OpenAI's latest marketing materials claim that AI won't cause real unemployment, which conveniently aligns with what the Trump administration wants to hear. But here's the problem. If you look in OpenAI's original charter, its core mission was to build artificial general intelligence that could replace basically all human.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Replace all human labor. All right, but you may say, well, I'm retired. I'm home free. I'm on Social Security. I'm on my pension. I'm living off my savings. I invested wisely. You fool. We're all linked together in the larger macroeconomy. So if large numbers of people with middle-class incomes in particular, because those are the ones that pay the income tax, the other 50% of the population in America does not pay income tax. They're in social welfare systems, right? They're in it. The illegals, for example, they are a net drain on the economy. It's the middle-class professionals that are supporting the unsustainable economy. What if large numbers of those people start getting laid off? Well, guess what? It's already happening in the tech sector, right? You have all these intellectual coolies, these people who are imported from India, from Taiwan, and then more recently from mainland China to build up Altman's empire of AI and Bezos and all these other characters. And Elon Musk. You saw them in a recent press conference with Elon Musk. He had two yellow guys nodding their heads. He's still using them. But once their function is no longer operable, they'll get rid of them. And that's happening right now. And I taught for many, many years. And a lot of my students were they were yellows, right? So they were in the safe professions. They were trained to become electrical engineers, science, technology. That's all fine and that's great. But they thought that that's all they had to do is to get that degree, get a job a few miles south, 100 miles south from Davis, California, and get a job with Amazon or Google or one of the startups, and they'd be on easy street. But now them same yellows and the browns, because that's the South Asian people, they don't like to be called yellow. I don't blame them. Right? So, no, we're Indian. We're not Chinese. We're brown. And you notice there's more brown CEOs in Silicon Valley than you have of the East Asian types, because through British colonial history, they've been proven to be quite loyal to Queen and country, or Crown and country. And this is the new royalty. So they're the CEOs of these. You don't see very many Chinese at the top position, because we've been taught through the film industry not to trust the Chinamen and the treacherous Nipponese. Right. But Gunga Din is okay. Gunga Din will die for Cary Grant while they're fighting the brown hordes. Right. And I'm portraying this not very flattering scenario because one of their own people, his name Suchir Balaji, was sacrificed at the altar of coolie labor from India. He's a second generation coolie. Both of his parents are engineers. He was a brilliant child. He was a brilliant undergraduate. He went to UC Berkeley. He had no problem finding a top-tier job in so-called Mossad Valley, Pentagon Valley, DARPA Valley, NATO Valley. Not a problem. He was recruited to join ChatGPT. He got to observe Sam Altman in close quarters. And what he saw just did not square with what he thought he signed up for. He thought he was going to be developing technologies for the betterment of humanity, not tools of techno enslavement. By the way, Karen Howe talks about this awakening process, or says the reason why she wanted to study engineering at MIT and get a job in Silicon Valley was because of the social worth, the value of her labor, her intellectual labor. And that's to be applauded. I'm not trying to put it down at all, because not all is wasted. We could use that intellectual labor for human purposes. Don't throw that out. All right. But of course, the point is that when she got there, she says herself, I'm not just inferring this. She said, this is not what I signed up for. And then she jumped out and this went into journalism, as I explained before. So now this we've been talking about so far, people whose parents are engineer. I'm sure if you looked at Howe's background, I bet her father is an electrical engineer. They're probably Taiwanese. They're second generation techies in America. The family did pretty well during the boom time, right? As the technologies were being built up. But now comes the AI phase where they're all being shed, right? So we've been talking about the high level, fairly privileged people, and maybe you can't feel sorry for the yellow woman or yellow boy or anybody who's in the technology. Oh, they get a job. Oh, they were making $250,000, $300,000 right out of college anyway. I'm here. I'm not making nothing. But that's short-sighted, because this AI revolution is affecting the working class as well. It probably affects their lives more immediately than those who are living in beautiful Silicon Valley communities like Atherton, California. I checked it out in prepping for this talk here. Atherton, California is the most, talking about home values, is the highest valued residential neighborhood in the United States of America. And it's in the heart of Silicon Valley. You can find 2 views on Atherton. Check it out, what the culture is. But what you don't know is, guess what? Guess what the ethnic background or a marker, what is the ethnic marker of 25% of the homeowners in Atherton? Yes, you guessed it right. Yellow. 25% of Atherton, the most expensive zip code in the United States of America, are Chinese. Chinamans. And all I hear about on the Alex Jones show or Dave Hodges or these right-wing paleo conservatives is talking about how China, the Chicoms, are going to take us over. Well, maybe they are. They are definitely a presence. And by the way, I have no special affinity or kinship with them, just because I call them yellow and I refer to myself as yellow, right? It irritates a lot of guys here who don't like the term because they were taught something else, the politically correct term, which I reject. But I don't feel, and I don't work with them. We don't meet together at nights and conspire with each other to take over American society. No. All right, just to clarify that, because I get the impression sometimes that people distrust people, like me on sight unseen. And it's not just because of exposure; it's because of these incessant messages saying that China is the problem. People like Gordon Chang, he's a elite think tank guy that you see all the time. Gordon Chang, he's probably being paid by Boeing or TikTok. Not TikTok's a Chinese company. I'm sorry, that's a bad thing. Some American primarily owned military defense contractor. He's out there to gin up the threat. Right? I'm not saying they don't present a threat, but Mexico presents a military threat to us, right? Even the Trump administration acknowledges that. Venezuela, they present a military. They're bringing in all the fentanyl. Of course, a lot of the precursor chemicals are coming from China. But let's talk about the full scope of the attack on the American Republic. Let's get back to the AI Republic. So here's how the black underclass of South Memphis, as I mentioned at the outset, are being affected by the takeover of these huge power plants by the AI people, the interlopers.
Sometimes the most shocking corporate misconduct is hidden in plain sight, invisible to the naked eye.
What is happening here will swallow our world if we don't stop it right here, right now.
Looking back, there was an early clue that the world's richest man was up to something here.
It's just like, why is Elon Musk coming to Memphis?
The people of Memphis soon found out.
Now Elon Musk is coming to Memphis to build the world's largest supercomputer.
A year later,
we here because we mean business.
People here want answers.
It's the job of the health department to protect our lungs, and not once have they went to XAI to see that they had 35 gas turbines operating and polluting our air.
We went to Memphis and found an environmental crime scene. Musk's data center burning enough methane to power a small city with no permits and no pollution controls.
I have not seen anything like this. We believe they've already violated the Clean Air Act.
As Musk helps dismantle the very federal agency that's supposed to protect us against pollution like this.
There is no way to miss how this is a coordinated strategy.
What does Memphis reveal about the future Elon Musk wants for us all?
So the mission of XAI and Grok is to understand the universe.
In 2023, Musk founded XAI to produce and sell artificial intelligence.
We want to understand the nature of the universe so we can figure out where are the aliens, what's the meaning of life, how does the universe end.
Its main product is Grok, an AI chatbot that he's incorporated into Twitter, or X. Musk was entering the race to dominate the AI market, but he was arriving late, years after competitors like OpenAI and Google had begun training their AI systems. So in Musk's mind, he had to move fast.
We went to the data center providers and said how long would it take to have 100,000 GPUs operating coherently in a single location, and we got timeframes from 18 to 24 months.
There you got your yellow head waggers.
So we're like, well, 18 to 24 months, that means losing is a certainty. So the only option was to do it ourselves.
Been waiting for this moment. I am pleased to announce that XAI's Gigafactory of Compute, the world's largest supercomputer, is to be located in Memphis, Tennessee.
Musk dubbed the project Colossus, after a movie about a supercomputer that becomes sentient and assumes total control of the world.
And so, my fellow human beings, we all directly and indirectly live in the shade, but not the shadow of Colossus.
When you think about the computational power that it will take to put humans on the surface of Mars, that's going to come from the Gigafactory of Compute that calls Memphis home.
We were told that by the company. And so it required speed and power.
It's announced as a done deal.
Keyshawn Pearson grew up in South Memphis.
A billionaire and his organization is coming to our city, and we're just finding out after the land has been purchased, after the project has been approved by certain officials, right, who did know.
This is huge. This puts the word out there that Memphis understands operating at the speed of business.
As a community, we're trying to reach out to people and understand what is XAI. He built it without us even knowing that it was being built.
We had to watch this over X or Twitter. Brent Mayo, Elon Musk would tweet often about where they were in the progress, how fast things were moving.
To train an AI system, a data center requires an enormous amount of electricity. The question was, where would the power come from?
Most companies, when they come to the city of Memphis, they plug into our power grid. That's what you think would happen. Why would this be any different? Unfortunately, we learned because it is a billionaire's corporation, it would be a lot different.
XAI made a deal with the local electric company for 150 megawatts of power and agreed to build a new substation to help meet that demand. But Musk's ambitious plans suggested he would need much more power than that, and fast. Soon, people started to notice some unusual structures outside the facility.
I drove out there, and the first thing I did was hear the turbines. You can smell it as well. Such a disturbingly unique smell.
From the road, Keyshawn and others could see a row of machines that are typically only used for remote or emergency operations. Mobile gas turbines.
I have never seen portable turbines used like this.
Patrick Anderson works on air quality cases for the Southern Environmental Law Center.
We know that these kinds of generators require air permits. And so right off the bat, we started filing records requests with the local Shelby County Health Department. Do you have an air permit application from XAI? And they came back and basically said, no, we have nothing to hand over. We also filed records requests with EPA to see what they had. They also did not have details on what is on the ground out there. Nobody from the regulatory side, the health department, the city, EPA, has told the public or us really one iota of what's actually operating out there.
To figure that out, Patrick and his team hired a photographer to capture the data center from above. The images revealed
it's riveting and alarming at the same time. You can check it out on your own. Most people are still not aware that their peaceable plot of Earth is about ready to be expropriated, right? And this is for the people who say, well, gee, I'm glad I don't live in New York. I'm glad I'm not in San Francisco, Los Angeles. Gee, it's got such a terrible mayor, Mayor Bass, and it's such. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no running away from this struggle, right? This is rural Memphis, ex-urban Memphis, Tennessee, right? Anyway, you can follow this, track this one, because you might think you're living out in East Tennessee, West Tennessee, out by the Adirondacks, whatever. If it looks like a good site for these super power stations, well, look out, because Elon Musk has already paved the way in the White House with the big, beautiful laws and the compromise of the EPA to make sure he can go in there and do what he pleases without any permits, without any knowledge, without any oversight. Do we want these types of AI oligarchs to run our lives? All right. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that groups like the Zizians are being manufactured by the energy so-called companies in the military. But we've seen that pattern in the past. We've seen individual sensational crimes always preceding or masking a larger takeover, such as the assassination of the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, and one of the supervisors, Harvey Milk, right? And it's coincidentally that was the opportunity for people like Dianne Feinstein and a little bit later Nancy Pelosi and even people like Willie Brown, Kamala Harris, to fill the new power vacuum. And they said, oh, it's because of Jim Jones in Jonestown, the Guyana massacre. And this cult is always a cult. It's a cult. It's a cult. It's a serial killer. It's a serial killer. It's a mass murderer. It's a mass murderer. It's the Zizians. It's Koberger. Right? That's just one example. There are many of them. The Zodiac Killer, the Charles Manson family, same. I mean, we know a little bit more about it now in 2025. Look at the Tom O'Neill book called Chaos. Right? So what we're seeing with this, we're being told that these, and they are a threat, but they are not anywhere close to a threat as the empire of the AI lords. The lords of the air, right? And this character here, many of his cohort I used to teach in class, he's clueless. He just sees sort of the personal glow or satisfaction he gets at being fired from his job as a techie. His parents, his yellow parents, they're probably immigrants saying, you need to go in technology. You need to learn programming. You learn to get a job in Silicon Valley, and we'll be okay. Just very briefly, I won't bore you with
I
it too
have
much.
been laid off. I've been in the tech industry as an engineer for over a decade now. In the recent years, I've been working with Google as a software engineer, and now I am jobless. But it's what I needed. Like many other engineers or even just people in the industry, I had different small projects that I started that went nowhere, stopped halfway. Plenty of those things, ideas written down, a lot of side crafts, and wondering what can I do with these things that brings me joy. And I thought maybe I could do these things on the side because it takes no extra cost. And many people who are employed in these office jobs can attest to this. It is actually remarkably draining for some reason. There's no physical labor, but there's still something there where when you are done with your work, you come back home and you sit down and you try to do something that you enjoy, you just can't find the energy to do those things. And I've been telling myself for a few months now that maybe I need to be cut, and maybe I need to be fired in order for me to do something that I really want to do finally. And the time came. So why am I making a video about this? Well, one, it's a kind of an accountability. I'm putting myself out there, and that kind of gets me into a space and mind of, okay, I am committing something that is visible to the world. You know, even though nobody's holding me up to it, I feel a little bit more committed by doing this. It feels real. Another thing is, I want to show my process.
In case you're unfamiliar with these types of confessionals, there's a whole subgenre of fired techies. And again, I'm not gloating, and I'm not, because believe me, I've been in that situation more than a few times. I've been fired from jobs. I was fired from a place called National University. They're based down in San Francisco, or not, San Diego, rather. I worked there for about 8 years, and they sent me a message saying it's because of they didn't like the cut of my jib, I guess, or any number of reasons. But they got rid of me. And do your coworkers care? Do they come to your assistance? Do they even do you even exist once it happens? So it's happened to me. It's happened to me at UC Davis. I went partly on my own steam, but I've told you the story where I went into the office one day and I went to open my door and the key didn't fit any longer. Yeah, those sons of bitches had rekeyed my office. Oh, man. That's how scared they were of me, right? So I'm not making fun of this guy. If you live and breathe in America, there's at some point you're going to get your ass fired. It's going to be a reduction in force. So you just, by the way, I used to tell my students this because they weren't, and I can't blame them. They weren't thinking of the future, and they weren't really understanding the system that I was presenting to them, the New World Order system, and how tech fit into it. And their parents were all immigrants who said, yeah, go into the safe professions. But they're finding out there is no safe profession because Larry Fink runs it all in so-called private equity companies. Even Las Vegas is sinking because it's all been bought out by Larry Fink, by private equity companies. People are staying away from Las Vegas in droves. I've been watching a lot of those videos as well because what's going on in Las Vegas is a barometer of the larger American macro economy. So I'm looking at it from all different dimensions, not just the tech. Do you want to see another one? Let's take a look at this woman. I don't know. She looks like she's barely 30 years old. She's probably in her late 20s. And she did everything the right way. She went to school. She got her business degree. She got a job in the glamorous tech industry, and they got rid of her. At least they sent her more than an email. Maybe she got a DM. I don't know. But they don't have to fire you in person anymore. At least in the old days, they'd bring you in, sit you down, and have a conversation with you, which terminated with go out there to your cubicle and take everything that doesn't have the corporate logo on and get out of here. And then they have the security guard escort you out. All right. I speak from experience.
Today, after this young woman recorded herself getting fired.
You have not met expectations for performance. We've decided to part ways with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there. Brittany Peach had been working in sales at the tech company Cloudflare for just 4 months, and she's being told by 2 HR representatives that she's getting the boot.
Can you explain for me why Brittany Peach is getting let go?
I won't be able to go into specifics.
Wait, why though? I just started. I've been working extremely hard. It's just very, very shocking. Very, very shocking. I've really given my whole energy and life over the last 4 months to this job. And to be let go for no reason is like a huge slap in the face.
I'm really sorry that you're having this experience and feeling this way.
Many applauded the 28-year-old for standing up for herself. So proud of you, goes just one of the many thousands of comments on social media. But some are taking Brittany to task, including Megyn Kelly.
What this is about is whiny, weak, woke youngsters who don't understand how the world works. And I really think these young people need to understand, work harder, do better, stop blaming others, blame yourself.
The CEO of Cloudflare.
My gosh. What does my gyno have to say about this? Megyn Kelly. Right. She's someone who made it up to big media, legacy media. Now she's rebranded herself as an independent indie voice. Right. How did she get there? Giving Roger Ailes blowjobs. That's how she got there. That's Megyn Kelly. All right, let's be real. And she's insulting this 28-year-old lady, probably her first job out of college. I mean, that's pretty cold, but that's Megyn Kelly. Just think about that when you watch her on the Megyn Kelly Comedy Hour show on TubeU. Just remember where she came from and her manipulative callousness. Surprised she didn't invite this woman on the show that she could berate her for entertainment purposes like Nancy Grace. Anyway, I felt I had to rant about Megyn Kelly, one of the biggest phonies on indie media, which has been recolonized by all these corporate legacy assets like her or replacements. All right. So at the other end of the spectrum, you have mystery suicides that I alluded to earlier, and I've talked about it in previous sessions here, and that is the quote-unquote suicide of Suchir Balaji. Here's the situation. It made world news, especially in India, because he's Indian American. I turned the music off. I think it might be flagged for a copyright violation. So I'll just read this. Ex-employee of OpenAI, 26 years old, found dead. This is just last year, November 26th. And of course, the SFPD covered it up. They said it was suicide. He quit a few months before. He had been there for 4 years. OpenAI, that's Sam Altman's company, as you already know. And he became a quote-unquote whistleblower. And he was about to testify about certain practices at AI. And that testimony was worth, I don't think you can put a value on it, hundreds of millions of dollars. He wrote on X about fair use in generative artificial intelligence. Yes, he made a statement that was picked up by the New York Times. And at that point, I imagine that he came to the full attention of people who saw him as a threat to the bottom line, to the investors of ChatGPT. Now, I'm not going to say that Sam Altman had direct involvement in it, but I do know from my own research that there's a whole roster of scientists and engineers at the university who have met strange deaths, sometimes attributed to suicide, sometimes as unsolved accidents. Right. And these are people who have inside information, or they are patent holders. Right. So this, again, fits the pattern. I'm waiting for researchers, investigative journalists to start putting together the brief on the Suchir Balaji death so that we can find out more of the dark side of Sam Altman that Karen Howell, she doesn't even talk about that case in this book. And this came out, maybe it came out too late for it to be included, but it's not mentioned. I'm not blaming her or implying anything of a devious nature so far as Karen Howell is concerned. But this information will come out. And more importantly, the public is, through talks such as this, hopefully, are being made more aware of the sleight of hand that's taking place by flashing up the trans killer at the Catholic Church recently. What was his name? Thomas Westman. He was trans, right, just recently. And then just before that, the Zizians. And there are going to be more that are put out there, unfortunately. And Megyn Kelly and Nancy Grace are only going to be focusing on the spectacularity of these seemingly one-off crimes. And of course, as a result, there's going to be a clamor for more AI identification systems, DNA identification. Just recently, within the last few years, there was the apprehension, and he's in prison now, of, I think it's James D'Angelo, known as the Golden State Killer. or the Visalia stalker. He went by all kinds of, he had a pretty wide range of travel, and he was a former law enforcement person. And they caught him through DNA analysis, which is why 23andMe and all these other consumer tests are being promoted so that you can be put into the database. And most people are going to say now, great, let's have that. We're scared of serial killers, but the serial killers, as frightening as they are, present no huge threat like AI itself does, but they'll be used as a fright tool, as a horror tool, as a Roger Corman type scream, bloodletting massacre, closed house killing student type of melee in order to say, yes, bring on the tech. We need it. Sam Altman, please enslave us. We will love our servitude. Can you see how that works? No, I'm painting it in broad strokes. I admit that. I'm just trying to make this larger point here. Now, fortunately, I will close with, and I'll be back after showing you the clip of this one rabbi from Chabad, Lubavitch, who nails it. He's an Orthodox Jew, but we're in complete agreement. And what he said, watch the whole talk. It's available on TubeView. Watch the whole talk and see if you aren't nodding your head through 99% of what he's saying. Do you understand? So this counter movement crosses ideological, religious, ethnic, political lines. There are enough people out there who see the threat of this empire of AI. Here we go.
Welcome to this special class. Today we're going to talk about a very, very interesting topic, which, like every topic in the Torah, is timeless. It's eternal. It has to do every period of time, every era confronts this topic in a different way. On the surface, it's something that belongs to biblical times, but really, we're going to look into it closely and we're going to see that it pertains to our time as well. We're going to talk about Judaism versus the occult. By this, I mean that the Torah lists in our week's parsha, the parsha of Shoftim, it lists a series of ancient practices that have to do with divination, sorcery, witchcraft, necromancy, all kinds of things that are very mystical, that have to do with the occult, that have to do sometimes with superstitions, all kinds of mystical beliefs and practices that were practiced by the ancient Canaanite peoples. The whole list is named, that's how we call it, and traditionally we call it the ways of the Amorites. For some reason, the particular people of the Amorites maybe were more dominant. They used this more, but really it was also associated with the Canaanites, with the Egyptians, all the ancient nations. And it's been throughout history. And the Torah makes this list, but then it forbids all of it. It says all of it is forbidden. It's not for you. It's something that you need to steer clear from, not to learn this from the nations. So we are going to read the verses of this part, and then we're going to really go deep into them. So let's open the verses. So this is, in, like I said, in our parsha, Deuteronomy 18, 4 verses. When you have come to the land.
All right. I realize not everybody is here to study Torah, but you can look at the talk on your own. I happen to be, I'm not, by far not an expert, but I am very much interested in biblical knowledge, biblical anthropology, history, and how it relates to our own predicament here. So I find talks like this, I surprise myself in this case, to be highly instructive, because this particular rabbi gets into these ancient prescriptions of his people, which are really universal, right? I believe, unless you're Babylonian or a Canaanite, right, or Egyptian, where Jews were in captivity for quite a while, and they picked up these really nasty occultic elements, and some of them migrated transgenerationally. A lot of them were revived in places like what we see today as the Ukraine, right? Parts of Russia, Central Europe, and you have the Sabbatean expression of this, the Sabbatean Frankist expression of this, which later migrated to the United States, Britain, and other parts of the world. And this is what you're seeing in the empire of AI. Of course, Karen Howe doesn't view it in this fashion, and I'm not blaming her for not really understanding her, but understanding this process. But for you, I want you to understand what's taking place now at the behest of Elon Musk, Alex Karp, Samuel Altman, Jeff Bezos, as part of this satanic infusion takeover of both religious and secular institutions, the capture of government and its institutions, its branches of government, including the judiciary. It's captured most of higher education, K through 12. It's already gotten there. The counter-revolution is you and me. We're not in any of these captured institutions. And I think that's why a lot of people who are attracted to Donald Trump and the people around him wanted to vote this in. But they weren't bargaining for the AI takeover either, which seems to be happening now. That's much bigger than the so-called Epstein files or anything to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. It's related. But again, that is kind of a sideshow to the real takeover that's taking place here, the capture, the AI capture. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a pretty wide-ranging critique or response to the empire of AI. And I'll revisit this book. I'll extend the analysis. I just felt that I needed to respond to the Zizian or the violent transgender Psyop that's underway, right? And if we express our knowledge, our foreknowledge of these types of events, they might forestall any attempts to continue the process. I don't know, but we have to put it out there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating in the live stream and those who are watching on the replay. And again, I'd like to thank the Patreon supporters. I add a lot of additional material because I also have some other themes I'm exploring. One of them I'll just mention very quickly is my hypothesis that the intensification and widespread use amongst female teachers in elementary through middle school and high school, the growing incidences of women in these professional capacities having sex with male students, underage students, minors, is related to the side effects of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, otherwise known, quote unquote, as antidepressants. So I posted some of those articles on my Patreon. You also will benefit by looking at my X account, where I post some of the links to the videos so you can look at it more deeply. The limitations of this platform, as good as it is, I'm not complaining. I can't post any material, articles, or I can't run the videos as long as I'd like to. But you could do it on your own if you look at these other platforms that I'm allied with. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, for your attention. I do appreciate your attention and your focus. And together, we're going to make a huge difference in bringing sanity back to the world. and bringing God back to the world. Yes, get behind me, Satan. All right, I'll be back with you next Sunday, God willing. Peace.